Hello, my name's Gaelta, and in this video I'm going to tell you how to change your life. I'm going to go through some tips and some tricks that I use to change my life, and hopefully you can apply them to your life and become a completely different person, the person you've always dreamed of being. I'll prefix this by saying I'm not a therapist, I'm not an addiction counsellor, and I'm not a professional life coach, but I went from worse than I ever thought I'd get to better than I ever thought I could be in the space of about 4 years. So through that time I learned some things and I gained some perspectives that I'd like to share because I think they can help you. And I've made a list of the tips and tricks that I have gone through and done that have gotten me to where I am. And I don't think that I'm an extraordinary person, and I don't think that I'm any different to anybody else. I think I just found a path that made it possible to do what I've done. What I've done is, if you've seen my other videos or if you've seen any of my other content, then you'd be aware of some of this. If you're seeing me for the first time, then first of all, welcome. But I used to be horrifically overweight, used to be a drug addict, and it almost consumed my life. So I've now gone to a place where I'm not a drug addict. I'm completely clean. I don't even smoke. I don't ingest caffeine. Nothing like that. I'm such a stuck-up asshole, and I go hiking and swimming, cold water swimming and kayaking and mountain biking and rock climbing and everything that you can imagine in that world, and I love it. I'm happy. I'm happy for the first time ever, and that's something I never thought I'd be able to say. I go on adventures all the time. I sleep in this car all the time, and that's a journey that I'm extremely proud of, and I think it's a journey that you could go on and you could be proud of, and I'd love to be able to give you some tips and tricks on how to do that. First of all, I will say, I think everybody expected my videos to always be in a forest, and I am kind of in a forest. This is a car park on the side of a mountain in the west coast of Ireland, right at the bottom of the actual mountain. I'm looking right now at a view of huge swathes of forest and a huge mountain soaring away from me. This is a forest right behind me, and I'm in an extremely secluded area. There's a van over there that I think people might be living in, but I'm not sure. And I would like to be able to have conversations in the car for the reason that I'm having them in the car today, because it's Ireland. It's pissing raining right now. It's taking a small respite, so you can't hear it, but I'm sure throughout this video you will hear it. And it's windy, and we keep getting really big stormy blusters, and I can't take the camera equipment outside in that. And also you wouldn't be able to hear me because of the wind anyway. So what I've done is I've sat in the car, which for me is a real safe space. It's a beautiful place for me to have a conversation. I've brought my mossy stick in because I can't ever do one without that. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to this chat. I'm really glad that you guys enjoyed the last video. Yeah, a beautiful response to it, and look, I'm so grateful. And yeah, I mean, let's get into it. I have some tips. I'm not sure how many I have. I just kind of have them loosely based out in my head. I haven't written anything down or anything. I haven't made like a 1 to 10 or 5 or whatever. I'm just going to talk about them as I feel that they're important. So yeah, I'm gonna start right into it. As a lot of you know, I changed my whole life. I went from what I just said to what I am now. And I think the first big step in that, and it's something that you really need to get into, it's definitely the first big realization moment of, aha, I can do this, it's gonna happen for me, is realizing why you want to change. I wanted to change for 2 big reasons. I think the first inklings that I wanted to change were two dramatic things, which was I got hospitalised with a heart condition because of my unhealthy lifestyle. It was a mixture of being overweight, taking stimulating drugs, and being really stressed and anxious put me in a position where I ended up having heart problems that put me in hospital a couple of times. And then sometime after that, there was a lot of things that happened in between there, but I'm just going to say sometime after that, I was in a house that got raided by the police, or the guards in this country. I say police so everybody understands, but the guards, which is the police in Ireland, if anybody's interested. And that's something that it scared me. It scared me a lot because it made me realise that the path I was going down was not healthy or right, and also being in a situation where you can sorry, there's a walker going in front of the car. He thinks I'm crazy. He's just looking at me. like a madman for talking to a stick. I would edit this out, but I'm trying to commit to not editing anything. If you don't see this bit, it's because I edited it out, but I got arrested anyway. And it bothered me for a bunch of reasons, because I realised how far I'd gone down a hole where I was in a position to be arrested, if that makes sense. And I don't think that people realise how scary a house raid can be. And it can really shake you. It really can, especially when you're not innocent in the situation. I was very lucky in the fact that in that situation specifically, I ended up being okay. There was a long, I won't say battle, but a long situation in court. I had many court dates. I had a fantastic lawyer. I was very lucky, and I got away with that not being, a huge thing where I spent some time in prison or anything like that, because I turned out to be innocent in that situation. But I'm just aware that the path that I was going down meant that might not have always been the case, So that gave me a real kick up the arse. But on top of that, I started just to become disgusted with myself. I started to realise that the people around me who I spent time with were who I was. Because I felt for ages, I was like, well, I spend time with these people, but I'm not like them, which is, it's a terrible thing to admit, I mean, it sounds so stuck up and pretentious, but it's the truth, Like, you always kind of feel like you're better than other people. I think that's, I mean, I don't anymore actually, but I definitely toxically thought that at the time. And then I started to realise more and more that I wasn't. I was somebody that was these dirty people that are around me, and these horrible, violent and unpleasant people that were around me is who I was, And also, it led into that because I took my boxing and I was a boxer for a long time, did MMA, did a lot of fighting sports. And because of that, I felt untouchable. So I'd get into fights all the time. And look, don't get me wrong, I didn't win all of them, but I won enough of them to give me a big head and a big ego at the time. And it kept me stuck in a life where I was like, well, yeah, but I'm better than these people somehow. But I realised very quickly that I wasn't. I was violent and I was unpleasant. I was doing the same things they were doing. And I slowly became more and more disgusted with myself. And then eventually I made a change. I've talked about it in my other videos if you want to go and have a look, where I was on a beach and a few things happened, and I just made a decision that was it. It was over. I was going to be a different person. And nature had always been a big part of my life, so it felt very easy to fall back into it. So I started hiking and rock climbing, as I just said. And I realised that the habits that I had were much easier to stay away from, because I'd filled my life with things that I loved, which is something I've talked about a load. I'm sure a lot of you are sick of hearing it, but they naturally fell away. And I think all of this just comes down to, you have to work out why you want to change. And it seems like a very cliche thing to say, but I'll be fully honest with you. Like, this one might have been a bit of a cliche one, but there's going to be some things I'm going to say in the course of this video that are going to be extremely unorthodox. They're going to be a bit toxic and unorthodox, and not the kind of thing that you expect somebody that's trying to give you a nice happy life to say, and they're definitely the kind of thing that I haven't heard other people say, because there might not be the right way to be thinking about things, but I think it's valuable. Because if you're in a street fight and you're worried that person's going to kill you, you're going to fight for your life, which means you're going to stick your fingers in their eyeballs, you're going to use your teeth and fingernails, which isn't very honourable and it's not the right thing to do. But if you're scared for your life, you're going to do that. And I'm telling you right now, if you're fighting to change your life, if you're fighting to get away from addictions, if you're fighting to get away from toxic people, situations or habits, you're fighting for your life. You're absolutely fighting for your life, and you should treat it as such, So if there's tactics that might seem a little extreme, I'm telling you, do them. And I'm going to go through some of them now with you, a lot of them. And look, don't wince when I say them, because some of them are, they're a little unorthodox, but they're what I did and it worked for me, and I think it can work for you. One of the things that I'm going to point out is that the next big tip that I have is, you're going to have to realise that at first, when you make a decision to change, it's going to feel great. It will feel absolutely fantastic at first. that won't last. It will come back, and I don't want this to be a reason that you don't change. I need you to really hear me on this. I'm only saying it so you're prepared for it, because it is something that's going to happen. That when you start to change your life, the people that were in your life because of the habits that you had are not going to stay in your life, and you may end up in a situation where you get quite lonely if you haven't replaced your bad habits and bad people with other things. You can get quite lonely. You really can, and you can get the feeling that you're doing something wrong because people don't want to spend time with you anymore, and people don't want to hang out with you anymore, and you're bored, because you don't have these fun habits to fill your life anymore, and maybe you're left with the emotions that you were originally trying to escape from. And that's not going to feel great. Honestly, it's amazingly worth it. And it's just a natural part of the process. But I think that a lot of people fall at that hurdle because they get to a point where they think, look, well, it's great. It's been great this far, but I'm clearly going the wrong way because people don't want to hang around with me. People don't want to talk to me, and I'm alone, and I'm not feeling good about myself, and I'm not seeing the results yet of this fantastic change I've made. I'm just seeing the negative impact of the other things in my life leaving. So you're definitely going to have to be prepared for, and I suppose the tip that I'd boil that down to is be prepared for the fact that it's not going to feel great after a while. You're going to have a really great run of motivation, and then there's going to be a lull. There's going to be a bad patch. See it for what it is. It's a natural part of the process. It's a thing that happens, and it's a little uncomfortable, but you can get through it. You use your newfound habits, and you use your newfound techniques, and the love of your new life to get through those times. That's what you do. That's what they're for. But this is just going to be the first big time that you have to apply those things in a negative situation, because at first you go, right, well, as I vouch for all the time, you add good habits in and you've still got your old bad habits. So it's all just love, light and great. But at some point, the other habits are going to start moving out of your life, and they're going to start leaving spaces that you have to fill. And it's going to be difficult, and you're going to have to apply your new habits to those to try and help. And I'm telling you right now, if you used to fall back on food, drugs, cigarettes, hanging around with unpleasant people, anything, it's going to be a weird sensation to try and replace that with hiking, walking, the gym, healthy foods, healthy coping mechanisms. That's going to be a bit of a transition, and it's going to be a transition that's feeling like it's not going to work. I'll point out I'm only talking about outdoorsy type stuff because that's the kind of person I am, and throughout the course of this video that is what you're going to get. But you can apply, if you were having any other healthy habits enter your life, you can apply those instead. But I'm obviously going to be talking about the ones that I applied to my life. But I definitely found when I'm having a bad day, I'm having a lull of a moment, whatever, falling back on a cigarette or a joint and hanging around with some people, going to the pub, getting absolutely mashed, that's an immediate pleasure response. That's an immediate, today now isn't so bad anymore. You're going to feel shit about it tomorrow, and it perpetuates a situation that's going to keep you depressed and unhappy. But it's a lot quicker and easier to use. That guy's just driving away. That's why you can hear an engine. But it's going to be a lot quicker and easier to use than coping mechanisms that are more slow release, healthy and natural in nature, and also you're not experienced at them yet. You will know exactly how to fall back on your bad habits. That is ingrained. That's not hard to do at all. It's going to be really difficult to fall back on new habits, So it's definitely worth mentioning as a tip to how to change your life. Be prepared for that and have faith in the new habits. They will become second nature eventually, but there's just going to be a transitional period. And I'll also point out that don't hate yourself for falling back, because you're not going to start one day, decide to change your life and just go up and up and up and up and up and up from there. I mean, if you do, that's amazing. That's great. That's fantastic. I mean, I'd like to think that I almost did, but I didn't. I definitely took back steps. There are times where I'd go, okay, I know I should do a bit of hiking or whatever, or I should go rock climbing or whatever because I'm having a bad day. And then you just see the wrong person. You just see the wrong person, and like I've been clean from cigarettes and drugs or whatever for, I think I'm really bad at word. 3.5 years. It's more than 3 years, 100%. But before that, I definitely dipped my toe into sobriety, and what would happen is I go, yeah, that's it, right? Good habits from here on out, and I go, right, that's it. No cigarettes today. No drinking. I'm not going to smoke a joint. That's just how it is now. That's over. And then I'd try and apply my new healthy habits. Like meditation, journaling, exercise, talking to people about my problems. And then I'd come across the wrong person, I'd be walking uptown. They go, oh, do you want a fag? And I go, nah, I gave up. And they go, go on. And I go, well, I am having a shit day. and you do seem to think it's a good idea, fuck it, I'll have one. And then you're done. Well, I've already had a cigarette, so I might as well have a joint. And now I've had a joint, I might as well have 2 pints. Well, I might as well have 16 pints, and then I might as well go home and eat 4 pizzas and black out on the floor. It's a domino effect. It really, really happens. Now, I'm kind of trying to talk about lighter things, like joints, cigarettes, food, alcohol. I'm not saying they're light, but lighter than prescription medications and hard drugs. And the reason I'm doing that is because I want this conversation to be applicable to a lot of people going through addictions, because I'll point out that addictions, they're all very different, but they're all the same. And there's a lot of different types. Now, I'm going to say it right now. You can be addicted to anything. There isn't specific addictive substances and there isn't specific addictive behaviours. Things that I would say that I have been addicted to negatively. Prescription drugs, cigarettes, joints, alcohol, food, driving really fast, riding motorbikes really fast without a helmet, fighting, being aggressive to other people, being aggressive to other men to feel powerful, doing nefarious stuff that I won't list off, buying expensive clothing because it gave me a feeling of power, not sleeping at night, trying to stay awake for as long as possible, depression. That's an insane thing to say, but it's something I've learnt, and it's something that it's real. You can be addicted to your own mental disorders, and that is a fact. I'm going to get a lot of kickback on that, but I want you to listen to me before you start freaking out. If you're somebody who has episodes of depression or anxiety, you can totally be addicted to those episodes. That took me a long time to realise, but I was, because you want to smoke, you want to drink, you want to do whatever it is, and if you're horrendously depressed, you can put on a sad song and go, well, I'm having a shit day and a load of bad things have happened to me. You put on a sad song, you indulge in that sad music, you romanticise the idea of all your bad habits, and you throw yourself in all those bad habits, and that music and the idea of all this comes with a lot of dopamine, and it comes with a lot of reward things. I'm not a fucking scientist, but it does something to your head where you associate your bad days with binging behaviour on bad habits, and that is a real thing. So you can become addicted to the idea of being sad, because subconsciously your brain knows that if you're sad enough, the good, yummy stuff comes in then after. And that's a fact. You can be addicted to depression. I was. These are all things I've been addicted to. Now, I'd like to point out, you can be addicted to good things. I'm addicted to the gym. I go to the gym a couple hours every day, and if that was taken away from me, it'd have a really bad effect on my life. If I can't go for a couple of days for whatever, it has a really bad effect on my life. Well, I mean, look, I don't go to the actual gym every day, but I exercise every day. If I'm out having adventures, I have resistance bands that I use. I do pull-ups off trees, that kind of thing. I lift rocks and I lift them to make myself feel like I'm doing something, make myself feel like I'm lifting weights, do squats, bodyweight squats, or I lift a rock and a big rock and I do squats, that kind of thing. I'm totally addicted to that. I'm addicted to going on adventures. I'm addicted to being outside. I'm addicted to all these things. Addiction is just a thing that's a part of your life. You just have to be addicted to the right things. But it's 100% a fact that different addictions are real. It's not just a certain list of substances, and you can need to recover from a lot of those addictions. I've been addicted to vaping as well. I didn't even mention that, but that's a whole other story. That was in between smoking, quitting, and smoking again. There was a whole vaping phase in there, because disposable vapes will get you, and they're delicious, and they'll ruin your life, but oh my God, will they get you. As will caffeine. But honestly, anything can be addictive. Anything. And if you need to recover from that, I think they all come from the same place. For me, they all come from the same place. For me, they all come from a sense of not being good enough and feeling lonely. Because if I don't feel good enough and I feel lonely, I have this idea that I'm not good enough and I don't have any friends and I'm lonely and I'm sad. I can replace that with a feeling of adrenaline, anger, or excitement. Now, those feelings are not what you'd expect. Happiness, pleasure, relaxation, enjoyment. Anger and fear are two things you can replace loneliness with very easily, by the way. I did it a lot, and you can become really addicted to those sensations, which is weird, but you can have to recover from any of those things. And if you're watching this for any reason, I think that what I'm going to say is applicable to all of those addictions. The bad ones. I mean, it's applicable to good ones too, but I don't know why you'd want to recover from a good addiction. if you do want to recover from a good addiction, replace it with a bad addiction. That would be such an easy transition. I want to recover from an addiction to rock climbing. I'm going to do smoking. That's going to be the easiest transition you've ever made. It's much harder the other way. But yeah, different addictions, there's no addiction that's any more or less. If somebody turns around and goes, I'm trying to give up this substance, it's not any more or less than somebody giving up another substance. Big class A, scary narcotic drug over here. Cigarettes over here. It's the same. For me, I've had to give up antidepressants and anti-anxiety medication. The one that starts with as an X, I don't know what I can say because this is going on YouTube, but Yanak. I didn't say it. And Valium. I said Valium there, but don't worry about it. They are definitely one of those things that people like, they're the hardest things to give up. And they are. They are very difficult, you know. I was getting them prescribed by a doctor and oh my God, are they, once they've got their claws in you, they're a difficult thing to give up. Oh, they really are. However, I wouldn't say they're any more difficult than weed. Now, don't get on my case and start freaking out about the fact that, okay, they're a physical addiction and they cause a physical reaction when you quit, which is true. That's not what I'm talking about. Weed doesn't do that, and that is a fact, and that does make them more difficult to quit. But I'm talking about the mental side of it. Falling back on something is just falling back on something. And for me, I actually found that when I gave up the pharmaceutical stuff, I didn't find it any easier than giving up weed, which is not even like chemically addictive, like substance addictive. It's habitually addictive, which was the hardest one for me because not only did it take a substance and a feeling out of my life, it also took a whole patch out of my life, which was, you know, talking to people and socializing and going out for a joint is an extremely social thing, and it's very different than a lot of other addictions, because like I think a lot of other addictions don't have such a social element to them as drinking and smoking, cannabis, weed, and cigarettes. To be honest, they don't have such a social element to them, so it's a little different. But look, I'm sure a lot of people will disagree with that. Get in my comments and disagree with me. I'll have another conversation about this, because you know that I do find it very difficult to talk about, because like you're talking about, for me, I'm trying to have a conversation about nearly 10 years more of the world's worst fucking addictions and situations and phases I went through and lifestyles that I had and things that changed. A lot can happen in 10 years, like, you know. But unfortunately, this is all condensed down into however long video, so I'm definitely missing out huge swathes of important things. But look, I'll have a lot more opportunities to have these conversations. The other thing is, I said that I'd say some toxic stuff, and here comes one. The toxic belief that you're better than other people is a really easy way to get yourself over a few little humps. Now, hear me out. It's not a good belief. It's not something I have anymore. It's something I used, for sure. When I wanted to quit smoking weed, I had to force myself to think that I was better than people that smoked weed. I don't think that anymore. I mean, if you're doing it on a degenerate level and you're throwing your life away for it, then, I mean, I wouldn't say I'm better than you, but I'd say I have better habits, which is a totally fair thing to say. But I had to get to a point in my life when people went, do you want to go smoke a joint? And everything in my body went, yes, I do, more than I can even think. But I mustn't. And to do that, I went, no, ew, you do that? Gross. And I did that with a lot of things. That's not a tip or a topic that people like to talk about, but it's effective for little bumps in the road, especially in the early days, that you're going to need to get past that. Now, I'm not saying it's something you should keep for the rest of your life. Of course it's not. But it is useful in the beginning to turn around to yourself and be able to go, well, I'm better than them. This is so easy. Oh, these idiots. Oh my God, look at where I am. It's a very, very toxic but very useful way to get over some of the nastier things in your life, like addictions that are going to be hard to shake. It helps. It really, really does. I said I'd say some unorthodox things, and that's definitely one of them. But as I said, if you're in a street fight and you're fighting for your life, you stick your fingers in somebody's eyes. If having a couple of months where you get a bit stuck up about stuff because it helps you get over some hump in an addiction, I'm better than you because I've managed to do this. If you manage to use that to get yourself over something where you would have otherwise fallen back, worth it. I don't care what anybody says, worth it. And it worked for me. So that's definitely a tip that I throw out there. That is really, really something that is totally worth implicating. And not hating yourself for back steps is obviously a huge thing as well. You know, I think that kind of leads into one and the other, because you're going to have times where that's going to work and you're going to have times when it's not going to work, and you're going to take back steps. That's the thing that's going to happen. That's okay. That's honestly okay. Bad days are normal. They're just a part of the process. They're a normal, completely fine part of the process. Respect them for what they are. They come along like an unpleasant friend, you know. They're going to be there. They're just, you got to deal with them and hope they go home soon enough. But the fact is, some days you're going to wake up and it's going to be a hard day. I have them right now. Like, do you know what I mean? I've been going through years of making myself better, and I still have days when I wake up and go, I want to vape. I want to vape, I want to smoke. I said vape because it's one's been getting me recently. I want to smoke, I want to smoke joints, I want to drink, I want to do these horrible things. I actually find it a lot easier to keep up my good habits than keep out my bad habits. I love going to the gym, I love eating healthy, and I love going for my hikes and my walks, but not drinking and smoking, that affects me on a daily basis. I don't find it easy not to do those things, and I find it very easy to do the good things. And the voice of addiction is going to be loud too, because it's going to talk to you in ways that you don't expect, and you're going to have to be prepared for it coming. Like for me, for instance, I used to be addicted. I'm not addicted anymore. I'm just having a bad day. If I had 1 or 2 cigarettes now, if I had 1 or 2 drinks now, if I just took a Xanax, if I did any of these things now, I'm not addicted anymore. I've broken the addiction. It's fine. I could do it casually just to help myself through this tough patch. That is a voice that's going to be in your head. It is. It really is. Even just for food. When I was dieting down because I was really, really heavy, I was dieting down because I wanted to get more healthy and I wanted to be able to do my outdoorsy activities. I was really good this week. I was really good for the week. Now, people talk about cheat meals. That's not really what I'm talking about. I personally don't agree with cheat meals at all. I don't think that that's a good thing. Now, not that I'm saying you shouldn't enjoy yourself. I'm saying that you should enjoy yourself all the time in light moderation with food, because food's a totally different thing to a drug. You can't just give up food. But I don't agree with cheat meals because they'd always get me, which is what would happen is, I would have a really, really good diet. And then I'd go, well, yeah, but I've been great. And it's a movie night. My mates are around. I'm just going to eat what I want. And I'd get it all in. I personally always had real trouble with that, because what would happen is I would start to associate food, which is an addiction I had, with good times again. As soon as I did that, as soon as I went, well, we're having a good evening, so we'll do this, my brain would go, oh yeah, that is what you do when you have a good evening. So anytime that I was having a bad day and I was like, what would help me now is a good evening, I would immediately fall back to food. So that's definitely the voice of addiction, because if you open that floodgate, it's very easy to fall back completely. Now, I know that because I always said, and I've said this a bunch of times, that as clean as I ever go in my life, there are 2 things that I would still willingly do. One of them is magic mushrooms, and the other one is edible cannabis. Those things I would still do. I'll point out I haven't. For 3 years I haven't. Very recently, I did edible cannabis again for a short period of time. I did it once, twice, and then again for another couple of days. And I enjoyed it. It was great. It's natural. It's just a way of relaxing. That doesn't bother me at all. I don't see that as like a narcotic. Do you know what I mean? Like, as somebody who used to be a bit of a degenerate, I don't see that as a big deal. It's natural. It's a plant. It's whatever. I could go and pick it in a forest. It just is what it is. I'm the same with magic mushrooms. As long as you use them, once or twice a year or something, or whatever, if you want to have a good time and you're not somebody who drinks alcohol, an edible is fine. Do you know what I mean? And that's something I have no problem with. I did it again recently because it had been about 3 years, and in my head I was like, I always knew I'd go back to I haven't done mushrooms at any stage, but I probably will at some point. I was like, I'll definitely go back to that at some point. Well, it's not really back to, because, edibles definitely weren't a part of my addiction cycle. So again, it felt like a nice separation for me. So I did, and it was fine, and it was easy. And it didn't make me feel like a degenerate, and it didn't make me feel like I was getting addicted again. Did it make me have a thought about, well, if I can do this, maybe I could have a drink? Yeah, it did. And if I could do this, well, okay, if I can eat it, surely I could just have like 1 joint. That's not a big deal. Like, it's the same thing, right? Immediate. Now, I'm so far past a place where that's going to affect me for it to get into my head and start actually, sorry about that little glitch. I didn't edit anything out. My camera just will only record a half hour, and we got to that half hour. So anyway, it didn't affect me to a point where I would do it, but it got me in the thought process where I could see that it would have totally got me a couple of years ago, and it might get somebody else. So it's something worth pointing out, that it's very easy to fall back if you add just small habits. That's why I don't agree with cheat meals, and I don't agree with the voice of addiction will speak to you in lots of different ways, and it will sound very convincing. I think what I'm trying to say is you just have to be really aware of what is the voice of addiction, because it's not like, oh, I'm just going to fall off and become a crackhead again. The voice of addiction will be very subtle, and it'll be right there, and you need to really listen for it, because it will disguise itself in very innocent things. So you just have to stay on top of that, because that's really something that does definitely happen. I'm going to talk about the physical exercise type side of things. I think it's extremely important to keep your body moving. That's a tip that I can't emphasize enough for a couple of reasons. Look, you don't have to go to the gym and lift big weights. You don't have to go and take a fighting sport really seriously. You don't have to go and hike up every mountain you see. But get into a sport, an activity, anything that would be negatively affected by your bad habits. That's how I'll put it out there. Whatever your bad habit is, find an activity that you really love, really enjoy, really would love to get into that will be negatively affected by your bad habits. It's the easiest way to push them out, because it gives you a whole other side of your life, a social element and a physical element that makes you want to push towards it. And it also just does, like people always say, oh, moving your body is good for your brain. My God, is it? My God, is it? And if you want to use it to be a little bit toxic, like I was saying about, I'm better than you, that's why I'm not going to do those things. Going to the gym makes that really easy in the beginning. Don't hold on to it, because you will end up an asshole. But if you need it in the beginning, use it to get over the hump. Here's another thing that leads into that. Motivational videos. Like, I've talked about them before, but I'm cramping my leg. I've talked about them before, but you have to be an animal. You have to, show them the beast you really are. Men shouldn't have feelings. Make $1 million by the time you're 10 years old and stab everybody who doesn't like you. I'm over-exaggerating, but you know what I mean. Just this kind of like narrative of be just this huge emotionless beast that has as much money as physically possible. They can be quite enticing in the beginning. If you're in a horrible situation, which I was in the beginning, they got to me. They really got to me, and it did turn me into an asshole. And did it get me started on rolling down the hill? Maybe, but it did a lot of damage to me, because in the beginning, when I did all my bad things, that was done out of insecurity and loneliness. It felt like it wasn't the same thing, but the motivational videos on YouTube definitely did the same thing to me as the bad habits. They glamorized negative things in my life. You need connection. You need friends. You should have healthy relationships. You should love yourself. It sounds so cliche to say, but of course you should treat yourself as somebody that you care about. Those motivational things is like treat yourself like an evil person you hate, that you want them to be the most jacked and most rich ever, so you beat them into it. Like that's not helpful. That's not useful. That's not right. That's not a good way to look at anything. So be wary of those. But, I'm sure they have their place for some people, but I have a real gripe with them. I'm not going to come down on them ridiculously hard right now, just because if they help some people, then fine. But I personally think they do an insane amount of damage. And if you stay stuck on them, if you don't just use them to get the ball rolling, if you stay stuck on them, it's going to have a really bad effect on your mental health. It's going to stop you from talking to people. It's going to stop you having human connections with, the opposite sex or the same sex, if you're that way inclined, or any sex or any gender, whatever you want to be in love with. Those motivational things are going to really aggressively stop you from having those connections, because they're going to make you feel weak if you do it. They're going to make you feel like it's going to take away from your money making and muscle building time. They're not going to help. They're not going to help. Look, use them to get the ball rolling if that's what you need. But do not leave them in your life. I don't think you should use them to get the ball rolling either, but if that's what it requires, if that's what you need, but they're not healthy. And I'll point out, they're not... It's not like you could do that. It's not like the people making them believe it either. I'm going to point out that's a money-making scheme. I'm going to put that out there straight away. Like they are trying to get an emotional response out of you to try and as a way of hustling. Like that's what that is. Like it's not actually going to help. Like if you did that and got to the top level of whatever that is, you're not happy. Do you know what I mean? Even if it did somehow make you crazy rich and crazy jacked, you're not happy. You're crazy rich and crazy jacked, and you might think that would make you crazy happy, but it won't. It won't. Human connection and enjoying who you are as a person and filling your life with activities that actually put a bit of magic into your life, that's what's going to make you happy. I promise you, that's what's going to make you happy. Do you know what I mean? I've had an excess of money, and I've been a very aggressive, violent person, and that's the kind of thing that's pushing, and it's not good. It doesn't help. It's horrible. It's not a world you want to be in. So please just don't get indulged in those. That's a whole different tangent I'd love to go off on. But they do something as well, which is they tell you to be on your hustle in silence, disappear and start a fight with the man in the mirror, don't come back till you win. I mean, they're very cool sayings, you know, they're nice, they're good, but just don't get stuck on them. Do you know what I mean? Because being alone, you do need to get good at being alone, but don't do it out of spite. Do you know? You need to get good at being alone for one really, really solid reason, which is if you fall back on your addictions out of loneliness, which I think is what most people do, I certainly did. If you can get okay with being alone and spending time in your own company, if you can be somebody that you like, that won't be an issue anymore. Certainly wasn't for me. On the days when I don't have anything to do with other people, I'm perfectly able of going getting a bit of food by myself, making a few of these videos because they make me happy, going for a hike up a mountain. I'm looking over here because I'm looking at a mountain, doing a bit of drawing, doing a bit of artwork, do you know what I mean? Going rock climbing. Maybe I go to the gym every day. I can fill my life with these things if I don't want to be alone. On top of that, I've also spent time in nature, 2 or 3 days at a time, in nature alone, which has taught me to enjoy my own company. So I don't have this panicky feeling that I have to fill it with something, which is when you'll fill it with a bad habit, by the way. I'm quite comfortable with it. Now look, obviously I get depressed and I get sad some days. And in those days, I'll use things like my activities and my friends to fill those gaps if I can. But if I can't, it doesn't mean that I'm going straight back to my bad habits or just sitting there alone and upset and scared like I used to. Do you know? I've learned to be able to be by myself, which isn't something that you can just do. Well, some people can, I'm sure, but it wasn't what I could do. And I think if you're somebody who struggled with addiction, I'm willing to bet you have an issue similar enough to mine, which is that being on your own, it's something you have to learn. It's awkward. It's difficult. It's uncomfortable at first. It feels lonely and boring and sad and depressing. It does at first, and then you start to fall in love with this vibe of your own isolation. It's great. Now, it's not something that you should indulge in all the time, but it's certainly something that you should be able to do if need be, so you don't throw yourself into these terrible habits. Because it's a superpower to be comfortable by yourself. It is. It's a beautiful, real thing. And after you've taken all of this on board, there's something to look forward to on the other side. And it's beautiful. It really is. And I suppose a tip that I'll leave you on is that what's on the other side of all this is beautiful. It really is. It's more than you could ever believe. Take it from somebody who was in the absolute pits and got to the other side. It's amazing. I didn't think that it was going to be as beautiful as it is, but it is. And I'm going to make a video of what it's like on the other side. I mean, this is just the first steps. I will definitely make another video on the next steps. But just remember that whenever it's dark, whenever it's difficult, all the negative things that I've just spoken about, in between all of those things are some beautiful experiences. And after you get over that hump of you break through and suddenly you're just rolling down the hill, it's breathtaking. It's breathtaking. I can't explain how good it is. And I think maybe the next video I do might be something to do with that. Or It might be I'll answer all the questions that I get asked all the time. That's another one that's in the works. Look, I know I rambled on a bit, but thanks for listening to all of this, and I really hope that some of it helped. Let me know if it did. It makes me so happy to read the comments that it does help. And I'll see you in the next one.